we're going to play a bit of Rod Stewart. Folks, this is Fergus Hodgson guest hosting for Bruce Scholl, and Bruce brings you daily news. This is 7-Eleven news, 7-Eleven each evening, and he shares summaries from the heart of the Alberta nation. I'm honored to sit in for him and bring my own flavor of truth and optimism. I cannot replace his style, but I will endeavor to further assist with liberating you from regime media and globalist manipulation. It is January 30, 2026, and episode 261. The title of this evening's show is Then They Fight You, Sovereignty Goes Mainstream. And that comes from the famous quote, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we're really going from the laughing to the fighting as we speak. Now, Bruce Scholl, the regular host of this show, is at the Conservative Party of Canada, or CPC, meeting. Now, I don't know the full details of this gathering in Alberta this evening, but we're going to use the opportunity to go live with him soon. He has a guest on there in Calgary at the event. I don't want to hold our guest too long, so just hold tight. Bruce, do you want to introduce the guest before I get, because I've got so much to say tonight about what's going on with the sovereignty movement and how it is going mainstream. There's so much news this week. Every day I go onto X and I just see the energy is rising, and there's more of a debate going on, which is so wonderful. Amazing. Okay, that is my book.
I'm starting off with your book. Ferguson. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Party of Canada convention. It's a convention 2026. Obviously, this is held once a year. And really, this is a pivotal moment for CPC because, as far as I can tell from the sentiment here, it seems like there's concern whether Pierre Poilievre should be the leader moving forward, or if they're going to be looking for somebody else. But I ran into some amazing people here while I was looking around in the lobby of this brand new building, the Bank of Montreal, so BMO Center. Beautiful facility. Anyway, I ran into a fantastic guest that I wanted to bring on here. He was willing to talk to us a little bit about Alberta sovereignty, even though I think that he's probably a little bit more of a federalist. He's certainly not a federalist. He's just telling me. And anyway, it's Rob Anders, you guys. Rob Anders, the former MP for Calgary West. And I roped him into this. I had to do a little favor. Now he's gonna speak to our audience, and I'm really excited to have him. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. It's a pleasure to have you, Fergus. I'm sorry, I'm gonna take over for a second here. And
sure.
We just have a couple of questions that Rob was gonna tell us. He was going to tell us what your thoughts are for Alberta, and what your hopes are for Alberta, what we can get. So you were telling me this before we went live. What are your hopes for Alberta in the short term, anyway?
Well, there's 5 things that Quebec does that Alberta should have been doing decades ago, and I remember Bloc Québécois MPs jostling me about this, and they were exactly right. One of them is tax collection. Quebec collects its own corporate taxes. In Alberta's case, that's about $8 billion a year that we could collect locally rather than have it done by Ottawa. When it comes to pensions, Albertans over contribute by $3 billion a year what they get back in return.
Right.
So another $3 billion, call it $11 billion now. Employment insurance, if we did our own program rather than do Ottawa's thing, etc., we have a younger demographic, we have a lower unemployment rate, we have a higher employment rate, et cetera, et cetera. So when you take that all into account, let's call it 300 million, 500 million. Pretty soon you're talking $12 billion just in those 3 things.
And that's yearly.
Yearly $12 billion would stay in Alberta. On top of that, Quebec has their own provincial police, as does Ontario, as did Alberta from 1916 to 1932.
And this is a fact I didn't know that Rob had just enlightened me about. So please go ahead.
So in Western Canada, we used to have the Northwest Mounted Police, Fort Macleod, all that stuff. And then during the middle of the First World War, the feds basically wanted out. They were, we had 1 out of every 10 people in uniform serving in the First World War. So they wanted to cut their costs. And they said to the provinces, okay, policing's on your turf.
Yeah.
You take care of it. So Alberta set up the Alberta Provincial Police. So from 1916 to 1932, we had that. And they actually did a better job.
Yes.
Than the Northwest Mounted Police. And then when the Depression came, and once again, pockets were lean, the federal government wasn't fighting a war, they created the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So that's how that went. All right, so do our own police. Also immigration. Quebec has, and Manitoba, have more control over their immigration than Alberta does.
Yep.
Let's do that. So that's 5 things right off the bat that either Quebec or Manitoba, other provinces are doing. Okay, easy peasy. There's 3 other things that I think Quebec and other provinces would also agree with Alberta on. One of them is environment.
Yeah.
Ernest Manning, early governments in Alberta fought for mineral rights, but those have been intruded upon by environmental regulations.
Correct. Yeah.
So I say, let's do our own environmental regulations, right? And not only just within the province of Alberta. Like if Alberta wants to put a pipeline down in Montana out to the Pacific, that's our business. Feds stay out. Furthermore, I would say that if we get an agreement with, say, for example, Saskatchewan and Manitoba to put a pipeline up to James Bay.
Yeah.
That's between us.
Correct.
I don't need the feds intruding on that.
Yeah.
Similarly, if I get an agreement with Northwest Territories and Yukon, that's us.
Yeah.
Feds stay out. Quebec, I'm pretty sure Quebec would agree with that because they've got their own issues with Hydro-Quebec, et cetera. Okay. Another issue is judges.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, we have a lot of our federal judges that are determined in Ottawa. Have them chosen in Alberta.
Yes.
Whether they're elected or selected by the attorney general or justice minister, whatever. Okay, fine. Final one: guns, firearms.
Yes.
Okay. firearms, just like the vehicle that you drive, is a piece of private property. According to the British North America Act, the Canadian Constitution Act, that should be regulated by the province. And it was. Constitutionally, that was a provincial thing. So back around the time of the First World War, Ontario, Manitoba, and British Columbia issued firearms licenses for people who own handguns.
Right.
It was a provincial license, not a federal license. We've only allowed the federal government to intrude on these things, which are actually constitutionally provincial jurisdictions.
Really?
So reassume what is constitutionally our jurisdiction. Feds have the criminal code, and let's face it, Quebec actually does their own thing with the Napoleonic Code, right? So there's ways you can, excuse me, get around this stuff. So those are all the things that I want Alberta to have. Now, if I have a federal government who fights me on any of those things, says you can't have what Quebec's have, you can't have what Manitoba has, or you can't have what you and Quebec agree to have, all right, well, then we have a referendum, then we have our negotiating, then we have, things say, well, Albertans are sick and tired, are being told by Ottawa we can and can't do, and for you to try to shut down our industry and shut down our livelihood and all this type of stuff. So that's the way I view this. And historically, you had the United Farmers of Alberta, which was a prairie populist uprising. You had the Progressives. What happened was, a bit of history on guns here. What happened was Arthur Meehan was brought in as a Minister of Justice under Warden during the First World War. And the Winnipeg General Strike happened in 1919. They were worried about the socialists, what was going to happen. And so Meehan brought in some gun control. And they were able to sell it in Ontario, but in Western Canada, they basically said, Britons will not be slaves. It's, one of the things in Rule Britannia. And so they had massive rallies, etc. Carrar broke away from the federal Conservatives and started the Progressive Party, which is how the word Progressive Conservative came.
I see,
And so you had Alberta, Saskatchewan, the West basically said, we're not part of the federal Conservative Party anymore because of what you do on guns. And so then in the subsequent election, where Meehan got reelected, but there were more progressives than there were actually conservatives. And so the progressives were not even the tail wagging the dog, they were the dog. And that was over guns. And so the West has often in the past stood up against gun grabs from Ottawa, right? You had the social credit government here in Alberta, which was the first in the world. Right. We had the Reform Party, which I was part of. I was the youngest member of the Reform Party elected. We had the firewall letter that was put out by Ted Morton, et cetera, et cetera. And I would argue today, you've got Mark Carney, who is the biggest brainchild advocate of central bank digital currency, which I think is terrible. Right? It's all about control. All you need to do is look at communist China and see what it does there, where you can't get a plane ticket, a train ticket, a bus ticket. You can't work for the government. You can't get paid unless you're subservient to the digital you want.
The social credit system.
That's right. So for all of these various reasons, I want to see Alberta assume more independence, more sovereignty, more control, more self-determination in these 5 areas that other provinces already have, in the 3 areas that I'm sure we'll get agreement with other provinces on. And if we look at what happened during COVID and lockdowns and masks and all this stuff, there were 2 things that stood out to me for the jurisdictions that bucked the trend. One was where you had bottom-up populism. So you could get rid of a Jason Kenney. You could get rid of an Aaron O'Toole, et cetera, et cetera. You could get roots in the Netherlands, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom-up democracy. The other one was a devolved federalism, a loose confederation. So, with Kristi Noem, she was able to do something different in South Dakota. With Ron DeSantis, he was able to do something different in Florida. Alberta, though it still was more restricted than I wanted to be, Jason Kenney threw more pastors in jail than anybody else. But it was still different than what Quebec did and what BC did and what Ontario did. Right? So I think that if there are things that we learn out of COVID, it is that you want to have an even more deconstructed and even looser federal system. Uttar Pradesh in India, for example, didn't do jabs. They did ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Good for them. 200 million people, 2/3 the size of the United States, right? A province in India saying we're going to do our own thing. So these are the things that I think will rule the day, and I think we're going to move more towards, because it's about freedom and it's about getting away from the World Health Organization, the United Nations, top-down, oppressive, tyrannical government.
Yeah. Fergus, do you have a question at all?
Well, I mean, I just find it tough. I mean, I don't know you personally. I just find it tough having any optimism at the federal level with the the Ottawa government. That I just see the trend in Canada over the last century has been centralization, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. In fact, one of the challenges is that, let's say, one of the positive elements that Mark Carney might have brought was lower interprovincial trade barriers, but that he is using that as basically a ploy or a cover for a national regulatory system. So I don't want there to be impediments to trade between the provinces, and but I also don't want the federal or central government to dominate to dominate the regulatory regimes. I agree with what was said before, that of course Alberta should do everything it can right now to exercise whatever sovereignty it can within the Confederation. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that'll make any transition more seamless. So I guess I don't have much optimism, Bruce, about there being. I mean, I know in terms of, let's say, the Conservative Party of Canada platform, there may be more demand for these things, and I agree with that, and I would support them. I'm just not excited about that being able to be achieved in Ottawa.
Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. No, I don't have any optimism about Ottawa. I want to make that very clear. I mean, I worked there for 18 and a half years. I know how messed up it is. I know how centralizing, I know how controlling, it is. So no, I mean, Carney is really terrible. I mean, this is a guy who could look down a camera lens and say that he wants to spend 150 trillion with a T dollars on the green agenda, which is 4.5 times the U.S. national debt.
Yeah,
it's 100 times what our debt was just under Trudeau. So that's an incredible amount of money. And the only way you can do that is by taking your money and my money and everybody's money and using central bank digital currency to literally manipulate people into buying electric vehicles and all the hoo-ha they want to do, 15 million cities, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's terrible stuff. With the Conservatives, with Pierre, I mean, it's still the federal government. It's still controlling. It's still big. It's still, it's an octopus. It's still all that stuff. But it doesn't have as crazy the ideas that Mark Carney does with regard to the environment, etc. I think that Carney's actually probably, and Trudeau before him, were the biggest stimulus for Alberta sovereignty going.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, if and I talked about this with Danielle at her rail car, down in High River in the summer. She said sometimes she has a tough time determining if Carney is more a central banker or if he's a bug-eyed environmentalist. He's a bug-eyed environmentalist. He was actually chosen ahead of other people who were better qualified with more experience, more seniority at the Bank of Canada, and then shuffled over to the UK and did his damage over there. So I think he's terrible. I think he's a smarter, version of Trudeau. Sure. Trudeau's just kind of a useful idiot puppet.
He's definitely a puppet.
That they had information on, etc. to manipulate. But with Carney, you have a true believer who's actually a brainchild behind central bank digital currency and some of this stuff. And by the way, when he sold off the last of Canada's gold bullion reserve, like we used to have 2,500 tons of gold in the 1960s.
Yes. Yeah.
If we just kept that, not added an ounce,
yeah,
we would have had the third largest gold reserves in the world after the United States and Germany.
Wow.
Okay. But he was there and he sold off the last bit of it. We're one of 12 countries in the world that has no silver or gold bullion reserves. Nothing.
Yeah.
Only thing we have is the stuff in the mints for them to mint stuff up. That's it.
Sure.
He's not an idiot. He knows that by doing that, like when you take our national debt from $600 billion to $2.6 trillion, you literally quintuple it. Of course, it's going to destroy the currency.
Yes.
There's no other way that can go.
Right.
And that's why you see silver and gold spiking up. It's not that silver and gold are doing so great. It's your dollars tanking.
Right.
That's what's really happening.
Right. They're printing more and more of the same thing.
That's right. They're printing money. And he's taking on this crap debt from Europe. Right? EU has about $20 trillion in debt. The United States is 35, 40 trillion, something like that.
Yeah.
If you take what's going on in the private sector with car, loans, etc., which like what happened with subprime mortgages, That's another 100 trillion. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It makes what happened from 1930 to 1933 look small.
Right.
And at
Certainly
that
does.
time,
Yeah.
at that time, 40% of the banks in the United States collapsed. Right.
Yeah.
By the time 1933 was done, 40%, 10,000 banks in the United States were closed.
Mhm.
Right. People don't understand how bad this type of thing can get. You know. So, former Riding Association president. Good man.
Any thoughts on that, Fergus, at all? I have a question, but if you have something
Yeah,
to
I
say
mean,
about that.
Rob, I'm not sure how long you're going to be with us, but are you still on X? This is where the action is going on.
No,
And the discussion
he says
about
that he
Alberta's
doesn't.
future.
He doesn't do too much on social media. So.
No,
Yeah, well,
apologize,
we're
mate.
missing you. We need you. There are 2 accounts claiming to be of you, but the
Yeah.
one
I
hasn't,
think they were set up by
hasn't
former
tweeted
staffers.
or hasn't posted.
He's set up
since
by former
2014.
staffers, he said.
Yeah, by
Okay,
2014.
I have another question. 2014. I have another question for Rob, and then maybe we'll
Yeah.
finish off there. My question was to you. We talked about this before, but in regard to the Alberta independence, I asked Rob. In regard to taking the petition, taking the signatures for the petition, if you're if you're not really sure that you want independence for Alberta, do you think it's a good idea to sign
Absolutely.
a petition?
Yeah, I would say this to somebody who's sitting on the fence. I would say the status quo sucks. Like the status quo is not working.
Yeah.
Right. It hasn't been working for us for a long time.
Mm.
So if you don't want the status quo, sign the petition.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, whether we win the referendum or whether we come close, or whatever, it allows us the opportunity to renegotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like imagine, dream with me on this. What if Alberta votes to separate?
Yeah.
And we say we want to do something better than what Thomas Jefferson did.
Yes.
We want better than the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and we want better than the U.S. Declaration or the Constitution in 1789. We want something better. Instead of the right to pursuit of happiness, we want the right to pursuit of private property.
Right.
We want to say that the maximum level of taxation that any government can level is 10%.
And
Because
nothing's
it's good enough for God, it's good enough for government, and it's the highest level of taxes that Rome imposed upon Carthage when they defeated Carthage. Right. You know, you can reset the deck, right? It's kind of like Thomas Paine wrote in Common Sense. You know, you have the ability to reset things. Like, you know, people talk about the 51st state. You know what the cheapest option is? Palau and Micronesia are freely associated states with the United States. What does that mean? They pay no income tax. The only people who pay income tax are the ones who work for the federal government.
Right.
And they pay no import duties or, you know, import taxes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So imagine if Alberta had that.
Yeah.
Okay. You would now be the lowest tax jurisdiction in North America. You'd be competing with the Cayman Islands.
Really? I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty sweet system.
It's like a pretty good deal.
So what I want Albertans to look at is look at the potential of what we could do here.
Yeah.
I remember when Richard Magnus was a member of the Legislative Assembly in Alberta, he proposed eliminating income tax. It would have been beautiful. Calgary already clears the second biggest amount of corporate paper in the country after Toronto. Bigger than Vancouver, bigger than Montreal.
Yeah.
Right, because of the oil patch, etc.
Sure.
If we were to do this, okay, the sucking sound of the money coming here from the rest of Canada and other jurisdictions, even in the United States, because our tax system at that point would be lower than Wyoming, which is the lowest of the 48.
Yeah.
You know, below the 49.
Sure.
And it would even be competitive with Alaska, which gives rebates with the oil royalties.
Yeah.
Right. So just think about it, folks. Right. Just in those 3 things I talked about: corporate taxes, pensions, and EI. You'd save $12 billion a year. That would stay here. It's all money.
Amazing, Rob. Thank you so much. Fergus.
Let me put us back on a split screen here. Okay, Rob, I appreciate you speaking with us. You know, I'm not so familiar with your story, but I'm glad that Bruce is there in the actual conservative forum, and I'm just very excited about this year, as you can tell. I hear all those ideas and I love it, and we're getting so close to this referendum becoming a real thing, which is the topic of this show to a large degree. Yeah. So I appreciate you lending your weight towards these ideas or these options into the collection.
Fergus, I have one more thing I have to say to the audience and yourself. Just
Go
in
ahead,
case
mate.
anybody's questioning Fergus, he lives in Colorado, but his heart is in Alberta, and he's even promised Albertans, myself and other people, that he feels like he is Albertan, and he's going to be moving here so that he can participate in this momentous occasion that we call the building of the nation of Alberta.
Well, Bruce and I have been chatting plenty, and I am a Canadian citizen. I mean, I discussed this on my last appearance or first appearance as a guest host, that I do live in Colorado.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to Alberta, but during the COVID era, I was in graduate school in the United States and just was get frustrated with all the lockdowns, as you might imagine,
Yeah.
and took up employment here. But no, I will be back soon enough to participate. I want to support this. I don't know that Albertans or Canadians realize the historic significance of a potential referendum success. I think it would just shake the world. It would really be incredible. And I want to convey that. And I've spoken with many people about the way that person-to-person interaction is so important. So I feel like I want to really be on the ground there supporting this movement. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much for bringing us on. You guys have a great night. God bless.
I mean, have a good night, guys. Cheers. Beautiful.
Okay, thanks again.
Yeah, that was our first ever. Well, this is only my second time as guest host of Unscrew the News, but it was our first ever, let's say, field reporting experience with me at the home studio, you might say, and Bruce out in the field at the CPC, or Canadian Conservative Party, or Conservative Party of Canada annual conference. Now, there's so much to get to, and I've got to be a little bit thrown off in terms of my planning of the show by going off with Bruce, but that's fine. Now, I labeled the show tonight. Let me just get up my text here. Then They Fight You, Sovereignty Goes Mainstream. And I thought about that today because there really has been a change in this past week. So this is Friday evening. And this past week, I've noticed, of course, this is most active on X. That's the platform where I recommend people go. And so there's been a big change on X where it's becoming much more dynamic, okay? A lot of action, a lot of debate, heated. And I'm going to go through a little bit of that tonight and give, let's say, the different perspectives. And I noted the famous saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And it really seems to be that we're in this transition, or this past week has there been that transition from laughing at you to fighting you. There's a lot of fighting going on. And the big, let's say, event in Alberta this past week has been the NDP, the New Democratic Party, or the Socialist Party, which has some support, minority support in Alberta. And they are writing all these pledges against what, quote unquote, separatism or the independence movement. And they are elevating the stature. But I've gotten a new screen here so I can share other elements. And I'm going to let me add to the stage and see how this is going here. So I've got my new screen here. And I want to just introduce people. If you want to follow me, please join me at Ferg Hodgson. I'm not sure if you can see me highlighting that. At Ferg Hodgson on X, that's the place to be. If you want to go on Substack, same, at Fergus Hodgson. And then my publications are the Impunity Observer, so impunityobserver.com. And if you were listening 2 weeks ago, I discussed the importance of this movement, why I believe in it so much. And this is the article I prepared after that event, right? The world needs Alberta nationhood. Secession will disrupt Ottawa's lethargy and inspire decentralization afar. And I basically say, so Canada is falling behind. And if you are wondering what Canada's future looks like on the current trajectory, it is a bit like Atlantic Canada. So I just say you can go to Atlantic Canada and see what is happening on right now, more of a backwater status. And I say that this is a win-win-win, triple win, right? So I say obviously it would be a win for Alberta, right? You'd have a more local, targeted, cost-effective, dynamic. It'd be an incredible opportunity. And as I mentioned before, a historic opportunity would really change the course of world history. Okay, but then I say it would be a win for the rest of the Canada because, of course, yes, in the short term, Canada would face fiscal challenges. It's not a secret that Alberta has been bankrolling the rest of Canada, especially Quebec and the Maritimes, for decades. I mean, going right back to Pierre Trudeau. And then I say the third win would be for the rest of the world because there are all sorts of secession movements or decentralization movements from the Zetas in Honduras to countries getting into tension with the European Union. There's a Texas sovereignty movement. I would love to see Ireland or the Irexit movement prevail and get out of the European Union. And if Alberta prevails here, it'll be just an incredible shot in the arm for those movements. So if you want to get the latest highlights of geopolitics in the Americas and read my own article on this topic, please go to impunityobserver.com. And our latest article actually discusses the situation with Nayib Bukele. And I know a lot of people are curious about that. And my other one is econamericas.substack.com. This is Paths to Financial Freedom. Okay. Now, so what has changed this week? This is the one. If you haven't seen this, you need to check it out. So this has caused a lot of the discussion, okay? The Financial Times published this quote-unquote exclusive. It wasn't really exclusive. That's a ridiculous claim. Everybody knew about these meetings, and Jeffrey Rath has been not kept it a secret at all. But I guess just the prominence of this publication was, it was relevant. It made it, let me go. Yeah, it drew more attention. So this, let's say, perception that a bunch of Albertans are going down and getting help from Washington, D.C., which of course makes sense. Of course, if you're working on a new country, right, you want to build alliances, you want to prepare for that new country and not just start it from scratch on day one. So to me, this is actually perfectly normal that of course you'd have meetings with foreign countries to build some stability, get the inertia. So I don't see why this has been so demonized as treachery or traitorous or whatever you want to call it, but it has been. And so here is my own response to this. If you can read here. So at first I say, well, they call it the fringe. It's not really the fringe, right? This is the thing. We've had a big event here in Calgary, right? You can see people have been coming out. An incredible attendance. And, it's just showing that these people are real. It's not just on X. And as I said, right, this Financial Times article is fake news. They really show themselves to be fake news because they claim some kind of exclusive. Everyone knew about the meetings. It wasn't exclusive at all. It's been talked about on X for weeks. Okay, and it is not fringe. They call it this some kind of fringe movement. We'll know that there's about a third support already, which is not fringe. And if it were such a fringe event, they're basically contradicting themselves. It wouldn't be newsworthy. It would be a waste of time. So it's just like this coverage. It just shows you how these major outlets can be really lost. Such a confusing, how can I put it? They have such a torturous or limited understanding of the situation here. And they just use these very dismissive terms about this movement. So, but the point is, this story from the Financial Times, this UK newspaper, generated incredible interest, okay? And let me just go through a few of the responses, because I think this is, how can I put it? This really is a turning point. This didn't corner, but it catalyzed a great deal of responses, right? So first, Carney, Prime Minister, he responded. He said he urges the US not to meddle in the Alberta independence movement. Of course, the United States is not meddling. The United States might give support or recognition, which is great. Of course, that's what the Albertans want and should look for. So this is entirely predictable. So I think the outreach to U.S. officials makes perfect sense, and this is where I want to respond also about the way that this has been characterized as the United States meddling. But of course, Alberta did not vote to enter Canadian Confederation, right? They're going to vote to leave. And so I see Ottawa as a hostile presence. They flood Canada with all the CBC garbage. They fund so much of higher education. So they are meddling in the independence movement, right? So many people get their funding through the central government of Canada, and that is tilting the playing field. Okay, so Mark Carney jumped in there. And then I'm going to play a clip, so I'm learning how to use this lovely platform. And the Premier of British Columbia, he had a crack here too. Let's hear what he has to say. Okay, let me get this sorted here.
I'd like to just take and pause a moment. I read an article last night in the Financial Times
other people are hearing it.
About a group of people from Alberta.
Oh, I'm not hearing it. I was before. Let's see what's going on here. That is really unfortunate. So anyway, so basically, this is Eby, the Premier of oh boy, let me get this sorted here. The Premier of British Columbia, he got frustrated about it, and he called these people traitors. And of course, this sparked even more, debate about it. And as you can see, my response was, and the proudest and most loyal Albertans are those who are working on the independence movement. They are not emasculated pawns of Ottawa like this person is. And I'm not sure why the audio is not coming through. I tested this out before we got started this morning or this evening. But anyway, so that's David Eby of British Columbia. He escalated. So Carney said to the U.S. officials, please do not, quote unquote, interfere. And then Eby said the people who are wanting independence and who are seeking to build good relationships with U.S. officials, they are treasonous. Okay, now, what is the response to this? And I think this is why I've recommended everyone, if you can, get on X, because that is where the debate is going on. Okay, so this is a wonderful metaphor, and I've mentioned this one before. Saying that an Alberta separatist is a traitor is like saying that an abused and controlled wife is a bad, disloyal spouse to her husband if she wants to leave. Okay, and I would say not spouse. I think that's too strong. Not even just a partner or a boyfriend, because Alberta never really agreed to be part of Canada. It's a complicated history there. But so this kind of guilt tripping is the response. Now, let's just clarify. So it is interesting seeing the response of the Ottawa loyalists. They are not really going after the real issues like the fiscal burden, the cultural differences, the lack of decentralization. They're not taking those on. And I suspect they don't want to take on those issues because they know they will lose, right? They do not have a strong case on those topics. So what they're going to do is call people names. You're racist or xenophobic or who knows what. You are some kind of hillbilly. They will call you a traitor to the country. They will seek to demonize people and intimidate them. And that seems that, that's the lowest hanging fruit for them. It's the easiest and probably what they think will be most effective. The challenge will be to get people to not be afraid, not to let this impact them. Okay. Now, let me just go. I created a list here of bookmarks of just topics that are going on. And let me clarify here. Now, I just want to go through the latest. This is what I mean. In my opinion, there is a misunderstanding that people who attack Alberta, or people who, there are all these people who are saying that they are both Albertan and Canadian. They don't seem to understand that these are two different ways of viewing the world. The Alberta way is much more in line with, let's say, the US Declaration of Independence, as our previous guest mentioned, where there is a respect for natural rights, life, liberty, property, and less of, let's say, the equity or diversity or who knows what, let's say the postmodern values of Ottawa and Laurentian Canada at this point. And this, but it's not just, let's say, the values, it is the way of life. So it's not just what they think or talk about, it's what they actually do. They're more of a rural working population, entrepreneurship population. Okay. And so I wanted to say, I personally did this a couple of years ago, but get your Alberta gear, promote that. Now, Russell, the Canadian Conservative, he just said that, and this continues the theme, that what is happening is rather than actually coming to the table and addressing Albertan concerns, and I think it's almost beyond the possibility or beyond the pale for Laurentian Canadians at this point, they're just going to call people names. And look, this is just one example shown by the Canadian Conservative. You're all a bunch of ignorant, uneducated grifters. And it's just so pathetic. Now, if you want to make Albertans feel ostracized or unwelcome in Canada, just keep this up. I just feel like these people are great advertisements for independence. Now, if you want to support Unscrew the News and get your gear, go to gdfnshirts.com. Let me see if I can open this up and show you guys. So go to collections, Western Independence. There are some great options here. I've bought some myself. Now we have some kind of, Unscrew the News, all caps, for a discount. So get on that. And you can see, the t-shirt and the stickers, great. And I've got many other great options. So get on that if you haven't already. Okay, now, one real leading light in this movement is Eva Chipiuk, and I think she's Polish originally. She's got a great following and is a wonderfully optimistic and positive spokesman for the movement. And I think she lives up in Edmonton, but she spoke in Calgary recently, and she's just giving wonderful insights. And I greatly respect her presence. So follow her, E Chipiuk. You can see that there. Okay. Now, I'm trying to think where to start because there's so much going on here. I collected so many thoughts. But this gentleman who's been working with the Libertarian Party, he was a candidate in the last federal election, he just explains the cultural gap between Alberta, and this is reflected by relatives of mine also, that Albertans are, he moved back to Alberta 2 years ago, and he said Albertans are disengaged from Ottawa. It's true. They're disengaged from mainstream Canadian media. Of course they are, because the mainstream Canadian media hate them. And progress in Alberta relates to economic growth, while in Ontario, it is some sort of identity politics that wins the day, unfortunately. Okay, now, yes, doing good in Alberta means self-reliance, rugged individualism, great. And being a part of a contributing member to your community. Whereas doing good in Ottawa is one, support for socialism. And I would add to that anti-Americanism, sadly. Now, I'd like that final point. There's a growing sense of hope. Amazing, amazing. A hope that Albertans may soon be rid of the albatross around their neck. Incredible. So get on X, follow these accounts. Now, this is one just a funny story. So this is BBC News. So one of these government channels or networks, and which of course I would like to see ended. But they note that the United Nations risks imminent financial collapse. And my response is, this is glorious. So anyway, so great news there. Now, this is what I was talking about before. The Alberta NDP, the Socialist Minority Party in Alberta, they've been putting up this pledge that they're opposed to separatism and they're going to make their position known. I think what they're showing, this is my interpretation, is that they're more loyal to the wishes of Ottawa than they are to the wishes of Albertans. And I'm glad that the rest of the members of the legislature, the provincial legislature, have not participated in this silly game, okay? And yes, my response was, so they're explicitly against Alberta in terms of that they're opposed to the wishes of Albertans, okay? Now, another great guy, this guy's actually from New Zealand, Peter McCaffrey. He, but now lives in Calgary. He notes the way that Albertans are getting, how can I put it, discriminatory treatment or a double standard is being applied to Albertans relative to what went on in Quebec back almost 30 years ago, about 30 years ago now. Because at that time, Quebec did have meetings with US officials to plan for the new country, as they should have. And it wasn't seen as such a threat or such an outlier. It made sense, right? Okay, I really want to get this.
Pause a moment. I read an article last night in the Financial Times.
It is not
about
working.
A group of people from Alberta. I won't describe them as Albertans.
I'll have to try that one again next time. Now, okay. There's another, where was this? So yeah, everyone's calling Jeffrey Rath a traitor. It's a bit ridiculous. Okay, another important point here to make, which I think is relevant, is that in Alberta there is a pride in your province, and it is in contrast to Canada. And I think it is relevant, important to promote this pride, that you have something to be looked upon positively, that your rugged individualism is admirable. And when you're asked by Laurentian Canadians or Ottawa loyalists, as I call them, whether they want to be part of this fading country, this country on decline, don't be ashamed to push back and say, look, we have great traditions here, which obviously the rest of Canada is not in line with. And let's be frank here too, that it's not just that Albertans feel different, it's that the rest of Canadians thumb their noses at Alberta. They know that Alberta is different too. So I love this kind of meme here, which shows the difference. Okay, and here's another, this is the clip I mentioned, well, this is what I was referring to, that Quebec separatists met with US officials back in the 1990s. You know, so this is, it's just so funny how people hold such inconsistent views, that apparently it's okay for Quebec, but not for Alberta, just because Alberta pays the bills, I guess, because they want the gravy train to keep flowing. And then this was another interesting poll, which just showed, even though this poll in Canada is super anti-Alberta, it was just funny how everywhere apparently Mark Carney, this outwardly globalist, or let's say almost anti-Canadian, you might say, Prime Minister, actually has very positive polling, except in Alberta. And as I say, of course, that means Albertans are their own people, right? They're different. And that's great. You know, so they obviously are not on board with the Carney train. Fine. And here, you know, this is where the food professor makes a great point too, that the picking a fight over ideological issues with the United States is so foolish. There's even this socialist, hard leftist president in Mexico, but is she picking a fight with Trump? She's really trying to back away from that, and in the best interests of Mexicans. Okay, So a great point from the food professor. There was also this provincial or MLA from British Columbia just stating his support for the work that the Alberta independence people are engaged in. He's obviously from northern BC, from the more rural areas. And he just said, yeah, if they could, they would secede from British Columbia. Amazing. So just another wonderful perspective, someone lending support with some credibility from British Columbia. Great. Okay, now I had some notes here about the trade agreement coming up. Let's move on from that. One of the interesting, let's say, topics that came up though was Danielle Smith from when she was, I think, a radio host at the time. So, but when she was, moved on from being in the provincial legislature and was on a break, you might say, she worked with radio stations and the Fraser Institute. And a gentleman I know, Gerard Lusachin from the Frontier Centre, prepared a document. He even asked me to give feedback on this when he was putting it together, on what Alberta could do about saltwater or ocean access. And so this tweet from, I guess, 5.5 years ago, right? This one, or 6 years ago almost now. So this one is being retweeted many, many times now, because it just shows that Danielle Smith, at least at that time, before she was premier, was very open to the jurisdictional challenges of Canada and was interested in how the borders of Alberta could be redrawn to make Alberta feel more, let's say, more respected within the Confederation. So there were two proposals here to give ocean access to Alberta and to Saskatchewan. Now, whether that would be considered, I don't know, in the negotiating process. I don't think there is a need for ocean access. Corey Morgan has addressed this in detail in his book, The Sovereigntist Guide. But I know a lot of people get hung up on that one, and this is just one approach to addressing that. Okay, so that's the end of my lovely tidbits for the day. Gosh, let me think what else to talk about here. I made a bunch of notes today. Now, the main point, or the main theme I wanted to get across today, is just that this is an incredibly historic moment for Alberta. Alberta is really going to change world history if the people can achieve a successful referendum. And the rising awareness that this is happening, there's going to be a referendum, and that a vast, let's say, easily a third of Albertans already support this, suggests that the, let's say, establishment types, they're afraid of this. They are not exactly excited about it. And so that's why we're moving away from the laughing stage and we're moving towards the fighting stage. It's going to get ugly. The accusations, the demonization is going to escalate. It's going to continue to escalate. We're just getting started, right? We've got 8 months or whatever until the referendum will take place. So I imagine this will get worse. And in many ways, it's almost healthy, though, because it'll generate a great deal of debate about what Alberta is, how Alberta is distinct, and what Alberta will be, what Alberta's identity is. And I think the debate will make people realize the case is strong. Now, I just hope they're not intimidated by this demonization, and then that the CBC and these other bought-off outlets do not, win the day or use this kind of manipulation, this emotional manipulation. Okay. I'm basically done with my notes for today. So if you want to engage with Unscrew the News, please follow Bruce on X at Unscrew the News. You can follow me at Fergus Hodgson. And I'm still working out I've got a new screen, so I'm better able to share now at least, but for some reason the audio wasn't working. I wanted to share a few clips with you. But if you want to give feedback and share topics, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks to Bruce for being in the field at the Conservative Party conference. Otherwise, have a good night, everybody. And I look forward to next time I can guest host for Bruce. Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.